Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's one of those beautiful things, and one of the heroes that a lot of us had growing up as a childhood, somebody who's responsible for one of the most beautiful universes, one of the most expansive universes, one of the most fan favorite and actually successful universes of all time, none other than Star Wars, comes out there and decides to rag on modern Hollywood, because this guy, of course, is an absolute legend in every nerd or geek's fandom out there, because whether or not you absolutely love Star Wars or not, you have to respect the legacy that George Lucas helped create and have developed into something that ended up becoming a global phenomenon, that was a franchise that was, well, essentially destroyed completely and devastated, bankrupted by none other than the Walt Disney Company, Kathleen Kennedy, and Bob Iger, and all the rest of their ilk over there. Well, ladies and gentlemen, George Lucas has some interesting words, had an interesting little interview that just came out as of recently, where he said a lot of things bashing Hollywood, the Walt Disney Company, and overall just how bad the movie making is going these days. And personally, I think it's one of those things that's always nice to hear. A lot of us feel like this is a little late to the game. Yes, absolutely. But as I always say, better late than never. A seat will always be open for you at the table. And if you are willing to jump in on calling out all of the absolute huge mistakes that the Walt Disney Company and all of Hollywood have been making over the last decade or so when it comes to storytelling and how they treat their fans, audiences, and at the end of the day, paying customers, well, I'll always be down to conversate with you, and I'll always be down to open it, because redemption is one of the most important things out there, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, George Lucas, I think in a lot of fans, Star Wars fans' eyes out there, has a little bit of redemption that he needs to do, because anybody out there who has a severe distaste for pretty much all things Disney Star Wars was very obviously upset about the fact that he made a public statement, although it was just a written statement and probably not put out specifically or even written by him, but nonetheless, his name was attached for it, therefore he is responsible for it, supporting Bob Iger in his proxy battle that happened just not too long ago. Well, obviously, this upset a lot of fans out there, considering what the Walt Disney Company has done to our beloved Star Wars over the last few years. And well, at the end of the day, boys and girls, politics are politics. And at the end of the day, all of Wall Street backed Bob Iger too, which was very unfortunate. But you know what's not unfortunate, ladies and gentlemen? This right here, George Lucas bashing all of Hollywood. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about here today, because as you can see from our headline over at cosmicbook.news, George Lucas not returning to Star Wars. Oh, to all of you people out there in the rumor mill who said George Lucas had been seen on set, that he was out there helping with things, and that he had returned, that they'd brought him back, that everything was going to be okay over at Disney Star Wars. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, from the man's mouth himself, he's not coming back. He's done making movies. Hollywood lacks imagination, and he tackles Marvel. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get into this juicy little article. Check out all the juicy details, see exactly what we've got going on here, and what we can praise our dear, sweet Mr. Lucas for. But before we do, if you do enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button, share it with all your friends, subscribe, and or follow to know what platform you are if you have not already, and leave us a comment down below. This is kind of a refreshing take to hear from Lucas, considering everything that's been going on to his beloved his formerly beloved Star Wars, and some of the stuff that went on with the proxy battle as well. Does this redeem him in any way, shape, or form in your eyes, or are you still completely and totally done with Mr. Lucas? Watch the interview with a legendary creator who opens up about the movie business and more. And I do recommend going and watching the entire interview. I think it gives you a lot of great insight. I think there's a lot of great body language and all that kind of stuff. You can always read a little bit more from it, but obviously in a 10 to 12, sometimes 15-minute video out here on the media platform, on the video media platforms, isn't really something we can go through the entire thing. So we're going to check out the highlights from here, but I do highly recommend going and watching it all. Not right now, after you finish this. Those rumors George Lucas is returning to Star Wars aren't true, as Lucas makes it crystal clear he is done making movies. And considering his age, considering some of the health issues we've heard about him having behind the scenes, considering the fact that he's got kids and a family to raise, I don't blame him one bit. The boy got a fat paycheck from the Walt Disney Company selling off his beloved creation. And guess what? I just cruise around, hang out with Harrison Ford, and get baked all day too. That's not all. As Lucas also says, Hollywood lacks imagination, and he happens to tackle a Marvel question. I don't think there's anybody out there who can deny the fact that, considering how many reboots, remakes, and sequels that we have seen over the last few years without almost any original ideas coming out of Hollywood in any way, shape, or form, that yes, I don't think there's any doubt that it's easy to say Hollywood lacks imagination. This isn't rocket science to figure out, but once again, we enjoy and appreciate hearing it. Of course, George Lucas is the legendary creator behind Star Wars and more, obviously. Regarding the rumors of return to Star Wars, the rumors recently came about when Lucas's Star Wars second unit director said he thinks Lucas is coming back to Star Wars. However, at the end of the interview with Francis Brute 9, watch below, George Lucas is asked if he will make another movie, at very least, a very last one. He says, "No, I'm retired. The last one I did as a producer was a thing called Strange Magic, which is an animated film. So I was doing movies that I wanted to do rather than I was financing myself and had my own studio. Lucan continued with his mention he is keeping busy with another project. I am building a museum in Los Angeles. It's keeping me very busy, he said. They don't have imagination. Lucas was also asked where he sees the movie business in 10 years. Same thing it is now. The stories they're telling are just old movies. Let's do a sequel. Let's do another version of this movie. There's no original thinking. The big studios, they don't have an imagination. And I don't think there's any doubt about that whatsoever. And even if they don't have an imagination, they can't even adapt things that they didn't create. We've seen what happened to She-Hulk, which was a beloved character by many Marvel fans out there for generations. And they just completely turned her into nothing more than a drunk 40-something in San Francisco who's just trying to get laid all the time. It was really pathetic and it was really tragic to see Jennifer Walters pulled down to such a one-dimensional and sad and pathetic character. Well, you know what? Yeah, that is very much a lack of imagination at the exact same time. And as our Marvel movies cinema, it is mentioned to George Lucas that Martin Scorsese said he didn't think of Marvel movies as cinema, to which George Lucas doesn't agree. Look, cinema is the art of a moving image, Lucas explained. So if the image moves, then it's cinema. I think Marty has kind of changed his mind a little bit, Lucas said. So this is some of the interesting things that he said. This is some of the highlights that he had specifically talking about Marvel, particularly talking about Star Wars. Yes, are Marvel movies? Marvel movies? Yes, they are, of course, movies. They are, of course, cinema. He is absolutely right on that. And that's one of the things that I think so many fans got upset with, like Martin Scorsese and what he said about all that kind of stuff, because it was really a very asinine comment to make. And it really did offend a lot of people out there. And I hate to tell you what, but Martin Scorsese ain't making no blockbusters that are bringing home buttloads of money at the box office. So at the end of the day, he can have his hoity-toity opinions and he can be all uppity and be all snooty and look down his nose at the average movie-going viewer out there at the end of the day. But guess what? The average movie-going viewer is the one who pays the bills. And George Lucas seems to understand that because he's seen what's going on with Hollywood. He sees how bad it's falling flat. And guess what? That is the bricks, boys and girls. And that's what Lucas had to say about it. And honestly, it shouldn't surprise anybody at this point. A candid interview with a candid man about things he could actually be honest about. Is he, of course, is he going to bash modern Star Wars? No, he can't do that because of contract regulations and stuff like that. It'll be a long time, if ever, before we see that kind of thing come out of his mouth. And I honestly doubt we'll ever see that kind of thing come out of his mouth other than what we've seen so far. So at the end of the day, George Lucas, thank you very much. Welcome to the party. We appreciate you being here because at the end of the day, we all know this is to be true. We know that it's lacking imagination, and we know that they're completely done. And to all of you naysayers out there who believe the rumor mill to the nines, look, I don't get mad at you for having hope that George might be coming back to Star Wars. Considering the disastrous dumpster fire that Disney has turned it into, I don't blame you one bit. To cling on to that kind of hope for something that we all grew up with, that we all knew and loved. Some of us got to see the original Star Wars movie in theaters when it first came out. Some of us just grew up with the VHSs and later on the DVDs and got to experience the prequels in the theaters for the first time. You know, there's a wide variety of Star Wars fans that span generations, and it's a global franchise that everybody loves. It's a global fandom. And at the end of the day, I don't blame anybody for holding out hope or for praying to God that it's going to get better. But at the end of the day, boys and girls, George isn't coming back. And honestly, unless something major changes inside of the Walt Disney Company, Star Wars is dead. And it's not coming back, at least not until somebody else finally owns it. At least not until the fans can finally get back a hold on to it again and actually make good quality stuff, because that's what you're going to see. You want to look for good quality Star Wars these days to actually be able to enjoy? Go look for the fan films. Go look at them. Yeah, maybe they're not as high quality as some of the stuff you might have seen out of Disney, but they're honest. They're pure, and they're good storytelling that sticks to Star Wars and represents it properly. And at the end of the day, that's all any of us ever wanted. And that's not something we're going to get from the Walt Disney Company anytime soon. So I'm glad George Lucas says this. I'm glad he's talking about this stuff. And I'm glad to say that, boys and girls, hear it from the horse's mouth. Stop believing the rumor mill and don't give yourself false hope. Because at the end of the day, false hope just leads to disappointment. George isn't coming back. He never is. And Disney Star Wars as a franchise is completely and totally dead.